The light switch made the same soft click it had made 20 years ago, when I first stepped into that office. Back then it was a dusty corner with flickering bulbs, a folding chair, and a whiteboard that still had someone else's doodles on it. Now it was glass-walled corner view with ergonomic everything and a plaque that said, Chief Systems Architect for about 12 more seconds. I stood there, hands still on the switch, watching the overhead fluorescence blink off for the last time. Name's Austin Phillips, but everyone calls me Ace. 47 years old, and I just got fired from the company I practically built from scratch. Behind me, my office plant drooped like it had heard the news, too. The photo of me and the old co-founders still sat on the bookshelf, slightly crooked from when the cleaning crew knocked it askew last month. I never fixed it. Maybe I knew this was coming. The hallway outside buzzed with the dull hum of people pretending not to care. When you've been with the place as long as I have, your name becomes the kind of whisper that managers squint at on org charts and interns try to Google, and yet you disappear with one sentence. One smug, rehearsed, soul-sanitized HR sentence. The exit is behind you, Jordan said, grinning like a man who thought he just won something. But we'll get to him in a minute. Before we do, if you've made it this far, pause and hit that little subscribe button and maybe throw a like this way. I know. Everyone says it, but unlike Jordan, you actually have taste. And trust me, what's coming, you won't want to miss it. Anyway, it's a strange thing leaving a job you practically raised from infancy. When I joined TechFlow Dynamics back in 2004, the code base was duct taped together by two guys working from Hudson Blackstone's garage in Austin. The server was literally under someone's bed. Hudson was this brilliant, chaotic founder who could code like a demon but couldn't manage a grocery list. I wrote the very first line of what would one day become a $500 million software suite on a borrowed laptop while a cat walked across my keyboard. I didn't just build the system, I was the system. From the login protocols, to the reporting engine, to the hand-coded interface we eventually replaced with something sleeker. I built the thing like it was a child I never had. While other departments threw happy hours, I stayed behind writing patches and onboarding every new CTO who waltzed in thinking they were the next Steve Jobs. Spoiler alert, none of them were. 3 CEOs came and went after Hudson stepped back to focus on the board. Some decent, some dumber than toast, but none of them ever questioned my place. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, but when the app crashed at 2 a.m. or the security expired on New Year's Eve, guess who they called? The ghost in the machine. Me. I saw mergers, audits, lawsuits, marriages, even a few affairs conducted through the office Slack. HR tried to block the word boobs once and accidentally shut down the whole knowledge base. And every time, quietly, calmly, I fixed it. I kept things running while others played dress-up in corner offices, and then Jordan Blackstone showed up. Now, Jordan was Hudson's son, but you wouldn't know they shared DNA from their approach to business. Hudson was old school, hands in the code, built from nothing. Jordan was MBA from Wharton, private equity-backed, buzzword fluent. When Hudson decided to hand over the reins 2 years ago, the board thought bringing in young Blackstone blood would modernize us. They were half right. Jordan modernized us straight into chaos. Jordan was the kind of guy who says, let's circle back like it's a power move, and wears cologne that smells like burned ambition. To him, I was legacy code in human form. He swaggered in with his laminated buzzwords and PowerPoint decks full of things like synergize monetization and cloud-native revolutions. I asked him once what a Kubernetes cluster was, just for fun. He said, I don't get into the weeds, which is CEO speak for I Googled it and still don't get it. Still, I smiled, nodded, did my job, kept things running, until this morning. He called me into his office, HR sitting like gargoyles on either side, and delivered the news like a man handing out parking tickets. Austin, he said, like we were old friends. We're restructuring. It's time for fresh blood. You've had a good run. I said nothing, just smiled. Do you have anything you'd like to say? One of the HR twins asked, eyes flicking nervously at my calm face. I thought about saying something witty, something scathing, maybe quoting Clause 7.3 from the original IP agreement that no one bothered to update. Instead, I stood, gathered my things, walked down the hallway past the engineers who suddenly found their monitors very interesting, reached my office, turned off the light. Click. One tiny sound. The end of an era. Except it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The weirdest part was how polite they tried to make it. Like if they used enough throw pillows and chamomile-scented HR language, it wouldn't be what it was. A hit job wrapped in a silk napkin. Jordan's assistant, Kelly, messaged me at 9:42 a.m. Can you step into the CEO suite for a quick touch base? Like I was about to get a company mug or a heads up about some new security protocol, not the gallows and high heels. I knew the second I opened the door. Jordan sat in his leather chair like a cat who just figured out how to open the fridge. HR flanked him on both sides. Janet and Trevor, team beige, their laptops already open, their expressions already pre-baked in concern. Jordan stood, extended his hand like this was some networking brunch. I didn't take it. "Austin," he said, like he wasn't about to professionally murder me. "We appreciate everything you've done. You've been with us a long time." 20 years, I said flatly, just so he had to feel the weight of it in the room. It landed like wet concrete. He smiled wider, like he mistook acknowledgement for agreement. Right, 20 incredible years, but we're entering a new phase. It's time for modernization, and unfortunately that means restructuring some legacy positions to make room for new talent. Fresh blood, new ideas. You understand? I watched his mouth move, but my brain focused on a detail behind him. Framed poster of our software's first interface, version 1.0. The one I built on Hudson's back porch with a dog at my feet and a mosquito lamp buzzing above my head. The one they now bragged about in shareholder decks as a revolutionary leap in enterprise architecture. Jordan had no idea he was firing the person who was the architecture. "You've had a good run," he finished, as if he was patting me on the head and giving me a coupon to Olive Garden. Trevor leaned forward, probably rehearsing this in his sleep. "We'll offer you a generous severance, 2 months full, Cobra access, outplacement services." "Understood," I said and stood. Just like that. No why me, no protest. No asking who they thought could possibly maintain the code base. No warning that the contract they never updated was about to cost them a 9-figure panic attack. Trevor blinked. Janet's eyes narrowed. Jordan tilted his head like a confused dog. I watched it land on them. Wait, he's not fighting this. They expected tears, maybe a desperate plea. What they got was silence so calm it became unsettling. "Austin," Jordan said slowly, "is there anything you want to ask?" I thought about it for one heartbeat, then I said, "Nope," and turned to go. The hallway outside felt colder than it should have. People glanced at me, then quickly away, like eye contact might get them fired too. Cowards, every one of them. I'd onboarded half of them, fixed their bugs, signed their time-off requests when their managers were off getting drunk at team strategy retreats. I passed the operations pit where someone was microwaving fish. Of course they were. And made it to my office. I took the long route on purpose. I wanted them to see, not to gloat, just to witness. Once inside, I shut the door and stared out the window. Rain, light, October drizzle tapping the glass. I stood there a moment before moving. I didn't pack much, just my personal laptop, the red leather binder that lived in the back of my filing cabinet, and the ceramic mug that said "Coffee first, bugs later," in fading black letters. The mug had a hairline crack that caught the sunlight like a fault line. Fitting. I glanced at my bookshelf, left everything else. Let the interns inherit my copy of clean code. Let Jordan keep the framed photo on the wall, the one where I stood beside Hudson and the original co-founders at the launch party, before any of them knew what they were doing. Before they started calling me legacy like it was an insult. I zipped up my tote, walked out without a sound, and took the stairs. 5 flights. I didn't want to share an elevator with someone who'd pretend they didn't know what just happened. Outside, the wind was sharp. I didn't flinch. I walked to my car, turned off my phone mid-buzz, and sat in silence. Let the rain fall. Let the servers stall. Let Jordan think he just executed a clean win. He didn't know yet, but he would. There's a difference between silence and surrender. One of them comes with a lawyer. The phone was the first to go. Powered off mid-vibration, mid-email, mid-whatever. The screen dimmed to black like it had finally been relieved of duty, and I slid it into the glove compartment like a sleeping pill I never intended to wake up. Company laptop stayed locked in the trunk. They'd get it back when they earned it, or when someone from legal came crawling to retrieve it, whichever came first. The rain picked up, tapping on the windshield like the universe was slow clapping. I didn't drive home. I drove east, away from the office park, past the dead-eyed strip malls and forgotten Pizza Huts, toward a spot I hadn't been to in years. A little cafe tucked behind a public library, kind of place with chipped saucers, mismatched chairs, and Wi-Fi that might work if you begged it nicely. I parked, took a breath, walked inside, and let the warmth wash over me like a security blanket stitched from espresso and cinnamon rolls. "Austin!" The barista blinked. "Haven't seen you in, what, a decade?" I smiled. "Still make those molasses cookies?" She grinned and nodded toward the glass case. "Only for the loyalists." I ordered one, sat down in the far corner, where the seat still wobbled if you shifted your weight wrong. I didn't mind. It made things feel human. From my tote, I pulled out the red leather binder. The edges were worn, corners bent like a book that had been reread through several past lives. I laid it on the table like an offering. No one around me knew that inside that binder lived the potential end of Jordan's career and maybe the company's illusion of control. I opened it to the first tab. Initial agreement. Austin Phillips, dated July 12, 2004, signed with a pen that had since exploded in my desk drawer. Back in year one, we were 4 people sharing Hudson's garage and 1 busted Keurig. I wrote the code. Every line. Hudson knew it. The other founders knew it. I didn't take a salary that first summer because they were burning investor fumes just to keep the lights on. So instead, we agreed on paper, notarized, scanned twice, and emailed to 2 different Gmail addresses for redundancy. The IP would remain mine until proper equity conversion. Specifically, ownership of source code, libraries, and compiled executables shall remain with the author AP until full equity conversion is completed and documented in writing. Hudson called it a placeholder, said it would be updated when we go legit, except we never did. Oh sure, we incorporated in 2005, grew, built client portfolios and sales decks, hired interns to write Slack bots that told us when it was someone's birthday. But the clause, the handoff, it never got cleaned up. Too much momentum, too many shiny distractions. Hudson stepped back to focus on board duties in 2018. Jordan's predecessors probably assumed it was done already. Jordan himself wouldn't have recognized a legal trap if it bit him in his LinkedIn endorsements. I flipped to the second tab. Email chain from 2008 where I reminded Hudson and the legal team. We still need to revisit IP assignment. I'm not incorporated into the Master Software Trust yet. Their reply. We'll loop in legal when we have bandwidth. For now, thanks for keeping us moving. Bandwidth. That was their word for we'll forget this on purpose. More tabs. 2012 reminder. 2015 follow-up. 2019 audit recommendation. Every single time, not a priority right now. Let's circle back after Q3. Different voices, same avoidance. I kept everything. Every reminder, every deflection, every shrugging soon. The binder wasn't just proof. It was time travel. Every page reminded me of late nights debugging APIs that no one else understood, of negotiating our first client SLA while the CFO vomited in a trash can from panic, of holding Hudson's hand through his first board presentation while he shook like a leaf. And there it all was, a living record that said, you may have built the skyscraper, but I still own the foundation. I sipped my coffee, the molasses cookie melting perfectly against the heat. My fingers hovered over my laptop keyboard, the one I bought myself years ago, one no company could demand back. I opened my email to Charles Morrison at Morrison & Associates. Subject, IP assignment and licensing rights. Hi Chuck, ready to talk? Just had an interesting morning. Let's set up a call. I attached scans of the binder tabs and clicked send. Then I closed the laptop and just breathed. No pings, no Slack emergencies, no performance reviews built by people who couldn't spell Jason. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. Inside, I watched a man try to plug in his charger upside down 3 times. The world kept turning. They thought they deleted me with a 6-minute meeting and a smug smirk, but they didn't know I kept receipts, and every clause is a fuse waiting for the right match. At 10:17 a.m., the East Coast Healthcare portal timed out mid-login for 6 hospital administrators trying to pull quarterly compliance reports. 5 minutes later, the insurance claims processor flagged 4 internal errors. Module X032 not responding. By 10:26, a government contractor from DC left a voicemail for our client success manager. Why can't we access the custom dashboard you promised? The thing about enterprise software is it doesn't implode with a bang. It cracks quietly and then all at once. At 10:34, someone in IT, probably Danny judging by the panicked string of diagnostics that hit the server logs, realized the auto-authentication flow wasn't just stalling, it was locked. The back end was refusing credentials like a bouncer with a grudge. Error. Permission denied. Insufficient clearance. It wasn't a firewall issue, it wasn't DNS routing, it was the system itself saying, I don't know you. The core modules, ones I wrote in the first year and wrapped in a custom layer of encryption and handshake verification, were sealed off like a panic room. Legacy keys expired weeks ago, and the updated authentication handshake? Let's just say I was the only one who ever rotated it on a schedule no one else ever tracked. HR might have deactivated my email, but they didn't touch the substructure because they didn't even know where it lived. 11:02 a.m. Jordan was in the server room, not his natural habitat. Security footage later showed him storming in like a televangelist trying to cast out demons, yelling at the racks like they personally offended him. Just reboot it, he barked. You want us to reboot the production environment? Danny asked, blinking like a hostage. Yes. Clear the cache. Reset the damn containers. We don't use containerization for the core modules, someone mumbled. Delete whatever's blocking access. He was shouting at air by then. Danny turned pale as he stared at the script outputs rolling across the monitor. Timestamps blinking, access loops failing, fallback credentials spinning like a car stuck in mud. By 11:23, sales got the first angry call from a Fortune 100 client. Someone in procurement unable to verify invoice packages. The portal glitched out and reset to a 2017 interface. Looks like an archaeological dig site. Then came finance. Then legal. Then DevOps started tracing the logs upstream. And that's when the real panic began, because there was no upstream. The heartbeat server that all those requests ultimately passed through, the code base that determined where and how data flowed, was gone from the active environment. Not deleted, just unreachable, masked, isolated. It had been wrapped in an invisibility cloak made of red tape and bad assumptions. By noon, a third of our client stack couldn't access their dashboards. A fourth couldn't authenticate at all. The chat logs were melting. Who changed the core routing? Why is the encryption key different? Who approved this update? Did Austin leave a credentials doc before he left? No, just a binder. That last message came from Lisa in DevOps. She meant the red leather binder. Had no idea what was in it. Jordan stormed back to his office, nostrils flaring like a bull trying to smell competence. Kelly tried to hand him a tablet. He slapped it away. I want eyes on everything. Find the last person who touched those modules. Sir, Lisa said cautiously, poking her head in the doorway. That would have been Austin. Silence. Jordan sat down slowly. His fingers hovered above his laptop, then dropped as he stared at the screen, slack-jawed. The infrastructure map they were looking at had holes in it. Entire branches of the codebase grayed out like ghost limbs. The internal admin panel said access revoked, but no one knew who revoked it because technically it was never theirs to revoke in the first place. From my cafe seat, I refreshed the internal status dashboard I still had passive read access to, thanks to an oversight buried deep in the legacy build process. Requests: 2,174. Failures: 847. Escalations: 39. Root access attempts: 5. Successes: 0. A pop-up chirped on my personal laptop. Chuck, my lawyer, confirming our call at 2 p.m. with a short message. Got your docs. Reviewing now. If what you sent is accurate, they're about to have a very bad afternoon. I took another bite of the cookie. It was still warm. Back at HQ, Jordan ordered another reset, and the system laughed in his face. 12:46 p.m. The General Counsel tried to push an emergency patch to bypass the failing authentication modules. One of those blunt force legal panic moves where you throw a stack of paper at a wall and hope the system blinks first. It didn't blink. Instead, it threw up a legal stop. Unauthorized access attempt logged, primary license holder not verified, patch request denied under operating agreement, the line that caused the full-body shiver, Apex Systems LLC, registered owner, Austin Phillips. Phillips, not Blackstone, not the company. Me. See, back when we were broke and running on fumes, I incorporated a separate dev shell, Apex Systems, to house the IP. It was standard practice for independent contractors. The intent was always to transfer the ownership later, once we had real lawyers and lockdown funding. Hudson even thanked me for keeping it clean and professional. That's how naive they were. No one ever circled back to close the loop because why would they? I was loyal. I was one of the good ones. The kind of person you could underpay and over-rely on. The kind who'd always be there when something broke. Until I wasn't. So when General Counsel tried to patch the failing code, the system called out the one name no one had spoken aloud in 6 hours: mine. That's when the nuclear call chain lit up. First legal called IT. IT called DevOps. Then DevOps called HR, and HR, with sweaty palms and twitchy inboxes, finally called Jordan. "Sir, we have a problem." Jordan, red-faced and foaming ego, marched into the war room they'd converted from an old design studio. Hudson's portrait stared down at them from the wall, back when the founder had more hair and fewer lawsuits. "What do you mean, Austin owns the code?" Lisa slid her laptop across the table. "Not the code. Technically, the shell company, the licensing environment, the executable layer that governs access. It routes through Apex, which he owns, which we never officially merged or acquired." Jordan blinked like someone trying to read a DUI test backwards. General Counsel, pale and sweating through his collar, cleared his throat. "There's also the matter of Clause 7.3. Clause what? From the original agreement. Licensing rights remain with the author until transferred or renegotiated in writing. It's never been renegotiated. You're telling me he owns our software?" "I'm telling you," the lawyer said. "We never stopped him from owning it." Silence fell like a dropped casket. Then someone whispered what everyone else was thinking. "Why the hell didn't we update the assignment clause?" And suddenly Hudson was back. Not in person yet, but in spirit via phone call from his vineyard in Sonoma. The founder was mid-sip of something $400 a bottle when the panic reached his inbox. "What the actual hell do you mean Austin owns the platform?" he barked across a speakerphone so loud it cracked the air. Jordan tried to spin. "It's a temporary permissions error. He built that thing in your garage. We agreed to assign it years ago." "Well, son," Hudson said, voice ice cold, "the documentation says otherwise." "Don't tell me about the documentation. Tell me who signed the damn update clause." Nobody had, because nobody ever did. Hudson had trusted his son to handle the business side while he focused on innovation and board strategy. That trust was about to cost them everything. Hudson lost it. You let him walk out with $1 billion skeleton key, and you didn't think to check if the door locked behind him? In the background, you could hear someone drop a glass, the sound of expensive Cabernet hitting concrete. Perfect. Legal started scrambling. They drafted retroactive assignments. They emailed template letters. They Googled Texas LLC seizure protocols like first-year law students cramming before finals. IT printed a list of all users with elevated access in a last-ditch effort to find some workaround. Everyone had the same thought. Maybe he left us a back door. Maybe he was bluffing. But I wasn't bluffing. They never understood the nature of what they'd fired. They thought they were cutting fat. But I wasn't ornamental. I was infrastructural. Every update, every migration, every security hardening, it all passed through Apex systems. I'd wrapped their empire around a skeleton, and now the bones were walking out the door. By 2:11 p.m., a second government client called to say their contract was frozen pending access clarification. That triggered an internal audit notice. By 2:24, an investor group started dialing Hudson directly. At 2:31, Jordan's assistant brought him a note. 4 words. Handprint shaking slightly. "You need to fix this." He looked up at General Counsel. "Do we know where he is?" "I think," the lawyer said, "he's lawyering up. They didn't know I was already in Chuck's office. And we were on our second espresso." My phone, dead for hours, finally groaned to life at 3:02 p.m. I turned it on for exactly one reason: to retrieve my 2-factor authentication code so I could sign a DocuSign Chuck just sent over. A clean surgical licensing draft. 3 years exclusive, renewable, with a clause that would make any private equity clown think twice before tossing their architects like expired yogurt. As soon as the screen lit up, the notifications exploded. Voicemails, 47, texts, 138, missed calls, 185. I didn't listen to a single one. It buzzed again, blocked number, then again, then again. It was like the device itself had been possessed by the ghost of Jordan's failing confidence. I muted it, flipped it over on Chuck's desk, and went back to reading. Chuck leaned over from across his mahogany desk, sipping his espresso. They're melting down, aren't they? Like a Jenga tower made of Red Bull and hubris. He grinned. You were smart to keep everything. Most people forget until it's too late. I designed the forgetting, I said, flipping to another scan in the red binder. I knew the day they got funding they'd stop treating paper like gospel. I was just patient. The emergency board meeting was called for 5:00 p.m. sharp. But by 4:36, most of the key players were already seated. Sleeves rolled, jackets ditched, eyes hollow from 12 hours of spinning their wheels in the muck of their own negligence. The lights in the conference room were too bright, the air too cold, and the coffee, once free-flowing and artisanal, had been replaced with whatever stale battery acid was left in the break room Keurig. They were waiting for Hudson. He landed in a private jet from Sonoma 30 minutes prior, still wearing sunglasses and what looked like vineyard casual. He didn't stop to say hello, just power-walked through the lobby with the gait of a man who'd been told his $500 million golden goose might actually be rented from someone he just fired. When Hudson entered the boardroom, no one dared speak. Jordan stood, trying to offer a handshake. His father walked past him like a ghost. No words, just a leather folder slapped onto the table. Inside, printed emails, IP documents, a red post-it with one word in Sharpie, why. General Counsel cleared his throat. Shaking slightly, he held up a stapled document that looked like it had been rescued from the bowels of some long-abandoned Google Drive. He read Clause 7.3. Licensing rights remain with author until transferred or renegotiated in writing. The silence afterward wasn't just awkward, it was radioactive. One of the board members leaned forward. That's from the original 2004 agreement? General Counsel nodded. Reconfirmed via unsigned assignment drafts in 2008, 2012, and again in 2019. None executed. The licensing entity, Apex Systems LLC, still active. Registered to Austin Phillips. All IP traffic for the core software routes through Apex infrastructure. So, wait, the same board member said, blinking. Are we saying we don't own the platform? We own parts. The front-end UI, the client integrations. But the core back-end, the source tree, the database schema, the licensing kernel, all licensed to us under implied use, never formally transferred. Hudson looked at his son with the disappointment of a man watching 20 years of work crumble. We've built our entire roadmap, our Q4 sales targets, on software we don't technically own. And unless we can strike a new licensing agreement with Austin within the next 24 hours, General Counsel said, we may need to issue a notice to shareholders regarding potential operational risk. Someone cursed under their breath. Someone else knocked over a glass. Hudson stood slowly. You fired the architect of our core product without cause, without legal review, without confirming that we actually owned what he built. He was legacy, Jordan blurted. He wasn't innovating. We needed new leadership. No, Hudson said, voice ice. You needed humility, and you just threw away the only adult in the room. The next morning, Chuck's office sat on the 23rd floor of a downtown building that smelled like polished stone and old money mistakes. I walked in just after 9:00 a.m. No rush, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense style. I looked like what I was, a man who no longer had anything to prove. Chuck greeted me with that same quiet smile. His assistant ushered me into the glass conference room where a thick bound packet already sat on the table. We're ready, Chuck said. They called 6 times since 7 a.m. Same question. What does he want? I pulled out the red leather binder and set it next to the proposal. Simple. I want terms. The packet was clean. 3-year exclusive license. $90 million up front, non-negotiable. Royalties on every new client rollout. Full advisory role with board-level veto power on architectural changes. I'm not coming back to code, I told Chuck. I'm coming back to protect what I built. Clause 14 wasn't about money. It was about narrative. The company will issue a formal public retraction of the termination notice, stating that Austin Phillips's departure was the result of internal miscommunication. And Jordan? Chuck asked. Clause 15, I said. Immediate resignation from operational authority. The signature ink dried like a final seal. Chuck gathered the documents. They'll have it within the hour. As I exited into the cold Austin morning, the city buzzed around me. oblivious to the shift happening blocks away in a boardroom full of people rethinking everything they thought they controlled. Real power isn't a corner office or a title. Real power is walking into a room where they tried to erase you and writing yourself back into the contract in permanent ink. I didn't threaten. I didn't yell. I just held the blueprint. And now they're paying rent on something they thought they already owned. By 4 p.m., the terms were accepted. Jordan was out. Hudson personally called to apologize and offer me the CTO position. I declined. I had something better: ownership, respect, and $90 million reasons to smile. I stood outside my old office door one last time. Same hallway, same plant. I reached for the knob, stepped inside, and walked to the light switch. Same click. The fluorescents buzzed to life, humming like an old friend. They tried to erase me. And now every line of code they run, every dollar they earn, every update they deploy, it all begins with my name. I didn't need revenge, I just needed them to remember. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise rebels. Hit that subscribe button, or this old architect might just design another corporate collapse.